I want to live to be old enough to have a meaningful relationship with as many of my grandkids as I can. That probably means making it into my 90s.
Because you must be plotting that with your VO2 max.
Yeah, it's funny. We do an exercise with our patients, which is called the timeline exercise.
Good morning. I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and give me the next few minutes of your complete attention. Not because I am going to tell you something you want to hear, but because I am going to tell you something you absolutely need to hear. And for millions of seniors alive right now, nobody has ever said it to them. Not their doctor. Not their family. Not anyone. My name is Dr. Oliver Robert. I have spent the last 25 years practicing internal medicine with a specific focus on senior health and preventive aging. I have sat across from patients in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Thousands of them. And I have watched the same painful pattern repeat itself over and over and over again. Good people. Smart people. People who took their medications, went to their checkups, followed the advice they were given. And they were still declining. Quietly. Gradually. In ways that nobody could fully explain to them. That ends today. Because what I am going to share with you in this video is not a list of complicated medical interventions. It is not a sales pitch. It is not a collection of vague wellness suggestions you have already heard 100 times. It is 5 specific daily habits that are silently accelerating the aging process in seniors right now. Habits that are so deeply woven into everyday life that most people never question them. Habits that the research has flagged as dangerous. And habits that you can begin changing today, starting from the moment this video ends. Let me give you a sense of what the science is showing us. A large-scale research study tracking over 11,000 adults between the ages of 62 and 84 over a 9-year period found something remarkable. The participants who identified and eliminated just 5 specific daily habits were 58% less likely to experience significant physical decline. They were 44% less likely to develop measurable cognitive impairment. And their reported quality of life scores were nearly double those of their peers who made no changes. Double. And here is the part that I want you to hold on to. The majority of those participants made these changes after the age of 68. Some made them in their late 70s. The body's capacity to respond, to heal, to recover, it does not simply switch off because of a number on a birthday cake. The biology is far more forgiving than we have been led to believe. But only if you give it the right information. Now, before we count down through all 5 habits, I have to tell you something about number 1 on this list. Because number 1 stopped me cold the first time I reviewed the research behind it. It is not a food. It is not a medication. It is not something you do at the gym or in the kitchen. It is something that happens inside your own mind. Every single day. And the research connecting it to physical decline, to immune suppression, to accelerated cellular aging, is some of the most compelling science I have reviewed in 25 years of practice. So stay with me all the way to the end. Because number 1 may genuinely change the way you see everything else on this list. Hi viewers, here is a simple question I want you to answer in the comments right now. When you wake up in the morning, do you feel hopeful about the day ahead, or do you feel tired before it even begins? Just tell me. 1 sentence. Because your answer matters more to your health than you might realize, and I will show you exactly why before this video is over. Now let us get into it. We are counting down from 5 to 1, ranked in order of increasing danger and increasing urgency. And I want to be clear about something before we begin. Every habit on this list is common. Every single one is normalized. That is precisely what makes it so dangerous. We do not fear the things we have always done. We rarely question routines that feel familiar. But familiarity is not the same as safety. And in senior health, that distinction can mean everything. Each one of these 5 habits has a direct biological mechanism behind it. I am not going to speak in generalities. I am going to explain exactly what is happening inside your body when you engage in each of these behaviors. Because the moment you understand the mechanism, the habit loses its grip on you. Knowledge does that. It breaks the automatic nature of behavior that has never been examined. I have seen it happen with my own patients. I have watched a 74-year-old woman regain energy she had not felt in a decade. I have watched a man in his early 80s walk a mile every morning after years of barely leaving his house. I have watched cognitive fog begin to lift in patients who had quietly started to fear their own minds. None of them took a new medication to achieve that. None of them underwent a procedure. They received information, the right information, applied consistently, and their bodies responded. Your body will respond too. The 5 habits we are covering today cost nothing to change. They require no prescription, no specialist referral, no gym membership, and no dramatic life overhaul. What they require is awareness, and the willingness to take what you learn here and act on it before another morning passes. Because every morning you wake up is a biological opportunity. And most seniors are unknowingly wasting the most powerful window in their entire day. We are starting with number 5 right now. Number 5. Skipping meals or eating at completely irregular times. This one sounds so minor that most people brush past it without a second thought. You had a late breakfast, so you skipped lunch. You were not hungry at dinner, so you waited until 9 at night. Life got busy. The schedule shifted. It happens. What is the big deal? Here is the big deal. After the age of 65, your body's internal timing system, the biological clock that regulates metabolism, hormone release, digestion, and blood sugar, becomes significantly less flexible. In younger adults, the body can absorb irregular meal timing and compensate relatively well. But after 65, that compensation window narrows dramatically. And when meals become unpredictable, the consequences accumulate in ways that are quiet, invisible, and deeply damaging. Your pancreas releases insulin in patterns that are tied to your circadian rhythm. When you eat at chaotic times, those insulin patterns become erratic. Blood sugar swings up too high and crashes too low. And in seniors, those swings are directly linked to increased fatigue, poor concentration, irritability, and over time, a measurably higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, even in people who showed no warning signs at all. But it goes further than blood sugar. Research published in the journal Cell Metabolism found that time-restricted, consistent eating patterns in older adults improved insulin sensitivity, reduced systemic inflammation, and supported better muscle protein synthesis, all within a matter of weeks. The timing of your meals is not just a lifestyle preference. It is a metabolic signal. Every time you eat, you are sending your body a message about what time it is, what demands are coming, and how to allocate its resources. When those messages arrive randomly, your body cannot prepare. It cannot optimize. It simply reacts. And reaction, in an aging body, is far more costly than preparation. I want to tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 71 years old, from Columbus, Ohio. She came to me after months of dizzy spells, persistent brain fog, and a fatigue so heavy she described it as wearing a coat she could not take off. Her primary care physician had run standard panels and found nothing alarming. She had been quietly told that at her age, some of this was simply to be expected. She accepted that. For almost a year, she accepted it. When I reviewed her full history, one pattern stood out immediately. Eleanor had no consistent meal structure whatsoever. Some days she ate twice. Some days, she grazed constantly without a real meal. She routinely skipped breakfast, and then ate a large meal late in the evening before bed. Her body had no rhythm, no anchor, no metabolic predictability at all. We made one structural change. We established a consistent 3 to 4 meal schedule, evenly spaced, every single day, with a firm cutoff 2 hours before sleep. Each meal included at least 25 grams of protein, a foundation of complex carbohydrates, and healthy fat for absorption. Nothing exotic. Nothing expensive. Just rhythm. Within 6 weeks, the dizziness had reduced significantly. The brain fog began to clear. Eleanor told me at her follow-up that for the first time in over a year, she felt like herself again. Not a medicated version of herself. Not a managed version. Herself. The practical guidance here is straightforward. Eat within 1 hour of waking to stabilize your cortisol and blood sugar first thing in the morning. Space your meals every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day. Do not eat within 2 hours of sleep. And at every meal, prioritize protein above everything else, because after 70, your muscles require more protein per pound of body weight than they did at 40, due to a process called anabolic resistance where muscle tissue becomes less responsive to nutritional signals. Give your body a schedule. It will reward you for it. But now we need to talk about number 4. Because number 4 is something that millions of seniors have been doing for decades on the direct advice of their doctors. They believe they are protecting their heart. They believe they are doing the right thing. And the research now tells a very different and very uncomfortable story. Number 4. Avoiding all dietary fat in the name of heart health. Let me say this clearly. The low-fat diet era caused enormous damage, particularly to the aging population. And much of that damage is still playing out today in the bodies of seniors who were told, faithfully and repeatedly, to remove fat from their plates. Here is what those instructions left out. Your brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight. The myelin sheath that insulates every nerve fiber in your body, the coating that allows electrical signals to travel efficiently from your brain to your muscles, your organs, your senses, is made almost entirely of fat. When dietary fat drops below a critical threshold, myelin integrity suffers. Signal transmission slows. And in seniors, that slowing manifests as cognitive dulling, slower reaction times, increased forgetfulness, and a general sense of mental heaviness that feels indistinguishable from aging itself. But it is not aging. It is malnutrition of a specific and correctable kind. Beyond the brain, dietary fat is the vehicle through which your body absorbs vitamins A, D, E, and K. These are fat-soluble vitamins. Without adequate fat in your diet, those vitamins pass through your system largely unused regardless of how many supplements you take or how many vegetables you eat. Vitamin D deficiency in seniors is already epidemic. Vitamin K deficiency is directly linked to reduced bone density and impaired cardiovascular health. And fat avoidance is quietly making both worse. Then, there is the hormonal dimension. Cholesterol, which your body manufactures from dietary fat, is the raw material for testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, and vitamin D synthesis. Seniors, who chronically suppress fat intake often show measurably lower levels of these critical hormones. Low testosterone in older men is associated with muscle loss, fatigue, low mood, and cognitive decline. In older women, the hormonal disruption from fat restriction compounds the already significant shifts of the postmenopausal years. Gerald was 76 years old, from Sacramento, California. He had been following a strict low-fat diet for 15 years. His cardiologist had recommended it after a mild cardiovascular concern in his early 60s, and Gerald, being the disciplined and conscientious man that he was, had followed the guidance without deviation. He came to me because his memory had been slipping in ways that frightened him. His joints ached constantly. His energy was low from the moment he opened his eyes. And despite following every instruction he had ever been given, he felt worse each year than the year before. His fat intake was critically low. His vitamin D level was severely deficient despite supplementation. His testosterone was at the floor for his age group. His inflammatory markers were elevated. We did not put Gerald on additional medications. We restructured his diet. We reintroduced healthy fats systematically. Olive oil, avocado, fatty fish twice weekly, a small handful of walnuts daily, whole eggs. We adjusted his supplement timing to ensure fat-soluble vitamins were always taken with a fat-containing meal. For months later, Gerald sat in my office and told me his thinking felt sharper. His joint pain had reduced. He was sleeping better. His follow-up labs showed improved vitamin D levels, improved hormonal markers, and reduced inflammation across the board. He looked at me and said he wished someone had told him this 15 years ago. So did I. The synergy tip here is critical. When you reintroduce healthy fats, pair them specifically with your fat-soluble vitamin supplements and your highest nutrient meals of the day. The combination amplifies absorption dramatically. Olive oil drizzled over vegetables is not just flavor. It is a delivery mechanism for nutrients your aging body is almost certainly not absorbing efficiently enough on its own. Now we are at the halfway point. And what comes next is something that happens in the most private and unguarded hours of your entire day. Something you have probably never once associated with health consequences. Something that is happening tonight, in your bedroom, right now, while you believe you are doing your body good. Number 3. Sleeping with the television on or using screens until the moment you fall asleep. I understand why this habit forms, especially for seniors who live alone. The television provides company. It fills the silence. It makes the transition into sleep feel less abrupt, less lonely. I understand that completely. But what it is doing to your brain during the hours that matter most is something I cannot allow you to keep doing without understanding the full picture. Here is the biology. Your brain produces melatonin, the hormone that initiates and regulates sleep, in direct response to darkness. The pineal gland, which manufactures melatonin, is exquisitely sensitive to light, particularly the shortwave blue light emitted by television screens, tablets, and phones. When light enters the eyes in the hours before sleep, the pineal gland interprets it as daytime and suppresses melatonin production accordingly. In younger adults, this suppression is significant but partially recoverable. In seniors, it is far more consequential. After 65, melatonin production is already naturally declining. The pineal gland calcifies gradually with age, reducing its output year by year. So the baseline melatonin available to a 75-year-old is already substantially lower than it was at 40. When screen light suppresses whatever remains, the result is fragmented sleep architecture. You fall asleep, but you do not reach the deep, slow-wave stages where the body does its most critical repair work. And here is what makes this especially important for brain health. The glymphatic system, which is the brain's internal waste clearance mechanism, operates almost exclusively during deep sleep. It uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours, including compounds associated with cognitive decline. When deep sleep is disrupted night after night, that clearance process is impaired. The waste accumulates, and the cognitive consequences emerge slowly, over months and years, in ways that are almost impossible to trace back to the bedroom television. Ruth was 79 years old, from Memphis, Tennessee. She had been waking at 3 in the morning almost every night for 2 years. She had been told it was simply a feature of aging. Her sleep had gradually become so light and so fragmented that she rarely felt rested regardless of how many hours she spent in bed. Mild memory concerns had begun to surface. She was forgetting appointments, losing words mid-conversation. She had started to quietly wonder whether something more serious was beginning. The television had been her sleep companion for 11 years. She fell asleep to it every night and often left it running until morning. We made targeted changes. A strict screen cutoff of 60 minutes before her intended sleep time. Blackout curtains to eliminate all ambient light. Room temperature lowered to 66 degrees Fahrenheit. 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate taken 30 minutes before bed, which supports the natural production of GABA, the brain's primary calming neurotransmitter, without the risks associated with pharmaceutical sleep aids. And a consistent sleep and wake time, 7 days a week, no exceptions. Within 3 weeks, Ruth was sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Within 2 months, she reported that the word-finding difficulties had improved noticeably. She felt present again, sharp again. She told me she had not realized how much the fog had thickened until it began to lift. The synergy tip here is this. Pair your screen cutoff with a consistent wind-down ritual that includes dim warm lighting, a cup of chamomile or passion flower tea, and your magnesium supplement. This combination signals the nervous system toward parasympathetic rest in a way that compounds nightly and improves in effectiveness over time. It is not a one-night fix. It is a nightly investment that pays increasing returns the longer you maintain it. Now I need you to prepare yourself for number 2. Because when I share what the research shows about this next habit, you may feel something close to anger. Not at yourself, but at the years you were allowed to continue this behavior without a single clear warning from anyone responsible for your care. Number 2. Taking over-the-counter pain relievers daily for joint or back discomfort. This is one of the most widespread and least discussed health risks in the senior population today. And the reason it remains so widespread is simple. It works, at least on the surface. You take it, the discomfort eases, you move through your day. The relief is real and immediate, and that makes the habit feel harmless. But the internal reality is the opposite of harmless. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the class of medications that includes ibuprofen and naproxen, work by blocking specific enzymes called COX-1 and COX-2. COX-1 in particular is responsible not only for inflammation, but also for producing the protective mucus lining of the stomach and for regulating blood flow to the kidneys. When you block it daily, both of those protective functions are compromised simultaneously. In seniors, kidney function is already declining as a baseline feature of aging. The kidneys lose roughly 1% of their filtering capacity per year after age 40. By 70, most adults are working with kidneys that are functioning at 60 to 70% of their peak capacity. That reduced function means medication clearance is slower, drug concentrations in the blood run higher, and the kidneys are far less resilient under the additional strain of daily anti-inflammatory use. A study published in the American Journal of Kidney Diseases found that regular non-steroidal anti-inflammatory use in adults over 65 was associated with a significantly accelerated rate of kidney function decline. And because kidney decline produces almost no symptoms until function drops below 30%, the damage accumulates silently for years before any warning signal appears. Beyond the kidneys, chronic daily use of these medications in seniors carries a substantially elevated risk of gastrointestinal complications and cardiovascular strain, particularly in those already managing blood pressure concerns. Frank was 82 years old, from Phoenix, Arizona. He had been managing chronic lower back discomfort for years. His solution, the one nobody had ever told him to question, was ibuprofen. Every single day. Sometimes twice. It allowed him to function. It allowed him to stay active. And he had been doing it for 4 years before he came to see me for what he believed was an unrelated issue. His kidney function had declined significantly. We ran the full panel. The numbers were not a crisis yet, but they were a clear and serious warning. When I connected the daily anti-inflammatory use to what we were seeing in his labs, Frank was quiet for a long moment. He said nobody had ever told him there was a limit. We stopped the daily use immediately and replaced it with a structured approach. Targeted movement specific to lower back support, which research consistently shows outperforms medication for chronic mechanical back discomfort in the long term. Topical anti-inflammatory preparations apply directly to the affected area, which produce local relief without the systemic absorption. Dietary shifts toward omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish and high-quality fish oil, which have demonstrated genuine anti-inflammatory effects in peer-reviewed research. And curcumin supplementation with piperine for absorption, which has shown meaningful results in joint discomfort studies for older adults. 6 months later, Frank's kidney function had stabilized. His back discomfort was being managed without daily oral anti-inflammatory use. He told me he felt more in control of his own body than he had in years. The synergy tip here is precise. If you are currently using daily over-the-counter pain relievers, do not stop abruptly without speaking to your physician, particularly if you have underlying cardiovascular or kidney concerns. But begin immediately building the nutritional and movement foundation that will allow you to reduce your dependence over time. Omega-3 fatty acids, resistance-based movement, and topical alternatives are all evidence-based and all substantially safer for your long-term kidney and cardiovascular health. And now we have arrived. Number 1. I told you at the beginning that this would not be a food. It would not be a medication. It would not be something you do in the gym or in the kitchen. And I meant that. Because what the research has identified as the single most impactful daily habit affecting senior health and longevity operates at a level that most medical appointments never reach. Number 1. Chronic negative self-talk and the quiet daily acceptance that decline is simply inevitable. Stay with me. Because I know how this sounds. I know that after kidney function and lymphatic clearance and melatonin physiology, a conversation about what you say to yourself might feel like a sudden drop in altitude. But I am asking you to hold that reaction for just a moment, because the science behind this is not soft. It is not motivational. It is hard, peer-reviewed, mechanistic biology. And it is some of the most important research in longevity medicine produced in the last 20 years. Here is the field. It is called psychoneuroimmunology. It is the study of the direct, measurable pathways between psychological states and immune function. And what it has demonstrated, repeatedly and across large populations, is that what you believe about your own aging has a direct physiological consequence. Dr. Becca Levy at the Yale School of Public Health led a landmark study following 660 adults over a period of 23 years. The finding was extraordinary. Individuals who held positive perceptions of their own aging lived an average of 7.5 years longer than those who held negative perceptions. That survival advantage was larger than the benefit associated with low blood pressure, low cholesterol, maintaining a healthy weight, not smoking, and regular exercise, measured individually. 7.5 years. From a belief. But it is not mystical. The mechanism is entirely physical. Chronic negative self-talk and the quiet daily repetition of thoughts like my body is falling apart, I am too old for this, this is just what aging feels like. These thoughts activate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and maintain elevated cortisol as a chronic baseline state. Not the productive morning cortisol surge we discussed earlier. Chronic, flat, low-grade cortisol elevation. And that sustained cortisol state suppresses immune function, increases systemic inflammation, accelerates bone density loss, disrupts sleep architecture, and has been shown to shorten telomeres, the protective caps on your chromosomes that are among the most reliable biological markers of cellular aging we have. Your cells are listening to what you tell yourself. Every single day. The nocebo effect, the clinical term for harm produced by negative expectation, is well documented in medical research. Patients told that their condition will inevitably worsen frequently show biological compliance with that prediction even when the underlying pathology would not necessarily have produced that outcome. Expectation shapes physiology. It does so through measurable hormonal and immune pathways. This is not philosophy. This is endocrinology. Helen was 80 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina. She had seen 3 different physicians in the 2 years before she came to me. Each one had reviewed her results, found nothing acutely alarming, and sent her home with a variation of the same message. At your age, some of this is to be expected. At your age, this is normal. At your age. Helen had internalized every word. By the time she sat in my office, she had stopped expecting to feel well. She had stopped expecting to improve. She described her daily experience with a quiet resignation that I found more clinically concerning than anything in her chart. She was not depressed in a formal diagnostic sense. She was defeated. And defeat, in an aging body, has a biochemistry. Her inflammatory markers were elevated with no clear structural cause. Her cortisol rhythm was flat and dysregulated. Her sleep was poor. Her motivation for physical activity had collapsed entirely. She had not left her neighborhood in months. We did not begin with a new medication. We began with a conversation about what she was telling herself every morning before she got out of bed. We built a structured daily practice of what the research describes as benefit finding, identifying specific, concrete things that were still working well in her body, still providing pleasure, still representing capacity rather than loss. This is not positive thinking in the superficial sense. It is a deliberate cognitive restructuring practice with documented effects on cortisol regulation and immune marker improvement in peer-reviewed trials. We paired it with daily morning movement, 10 minutes outside within 20 minutes of waking, using the light and gentle physical engagement to anchor a new biological morning signal. We added the dietary and sleep foundations we have already discussed. We addressed her chronic anti-inflammatory use. We restructured her meal timing. 3 months later, Helen's inflammatory markers had improved measurably. Her sleep had extended and deepened. She had walked to a farmer's market 2 miles from her home and back. She told me something that I carry with me still. She said that for years she had been waiting for her body to give her permission to live fully. And then she realized her body had been waiting for her. That is the truth that sits underneath everything on this list. Your body is not your adversary. It is not broken beyond reach. It is not simply winding down on a fixed and unalterable schedule. It is a responsive, adaptive, astonishing biological system that has kept you alive through decades of challenge, change, and demand. And it is still responsive right now. Today, at whatever age you are watching this. The inputs are what determine the outputs. Irregular meal timing sends your metabolism into disarray. Remove it, establish rhythm, and the metabolism responds. That avoidance stars the brain and the hormonal system. Restore healthy fat, and absorption, cognition, and hormonal markers begin to improve. Screen exposure at night fragments the sleep that your brain needs to clean and repair itself. Remove the screens, restore deep sleep, and the clearance system operates as it was designed to. Daily oral pain relievers taken without supervision silently compromise your kidneys and your gastrointestinal lining. Replace them with targeted, evidence-based alternatives and the body stabilizes. And the daily quiet acceptance that decline is inevitable suppresses your immune function, disrupts your cortisol rhythm, and shortens the very cellular structures that govern how your body ages at its most fundamental level. Change the belief, anchor it in movement and light and genuine evidence of your own capacity, and the biology follows. Eleanor got her energy back. Gerald got his thinking back. Ruth got her sleep back. Frank got his health trajectory back. Helen got her life back. None of them took a new medication to do it. None of them required a procedure or a specialist or a dramatic intervention. They required the right information, applied with consistency, starting from exactly where they were. You have that information now. And the only question that remains is the one I asked you at the very beginning of this video. When you wake up tomorrow morning, what are you going to do with the first moments of that day? Are you going to sit in the familiar chair, reach for the familiar screen, eat at the familiar irregular hour, and tell yourself the familiar story about what your age means for your future? Or are you going to do something different? 10 minutes. A walk outside. Morning light on your face. A meal with real protein at a consistent hour. A bedroom with the screen off and the room cool and quiet. And a different conversation with yourself about what this body of yours is still fully capable of. Start with one. Just one of these 5 changes. Commit to it for 21 days. Because 21 days is the minimum threshold at which behavioral neuroscience shows new habits begin to create measurable changes in neural pathway strength. You are not overhauling your life. You are adjusting one input, and then watching what this remarkable body does with it. If this video reached you at the right moment, if something here landed in a way that felt personal and true, please share it with someone you love who needs to hear it. A spouse, a sibling, A friend who has been quietly accepting things they do not have to accept. And if you are not yet part of this community, subscribe now. Because every week we bring you research-backed, clinically grounded information designed specifically for adults in their senior years who refuse to believe that the best of life is already behind them. It is not behind you. Now I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, which of these 5 habits are you going to work on first? And if you have already made a change in your senior years that gave you something back, tell me that too. Because your story is not just yours. It belongs to every person watching this who has not yet found the courage to begin. I will be reading every single one. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.